Today, we are going to talk about copycats and what you can actually do about them. We're also going to be talking about how to protect yourself. So if someone hasn't copied you, then we're going to be talking about what you can actually do to stop them, and also the steps that you should be taking right now. So you might be fearful of starting a handmade business because you are worried someone will take your designs, or you have a shop and you want to protect yourself, or you have been victim of copycattery. I am not a legal expert, but I'm going to be sharing with you what I have found out through research, correspondence with Etsy, and chatting to people that this has happened to. At the end of this, I'm going to be giving you a homework checklist to protect yourself. Hey, if you are new around here, I am Steph, and I help you to start, run, and scale your handmade business to take it from expensive hobby to consistent 4- and 5-figure month on Etsy and your own website. And I help over 80,000 people every single week by dropping some mad value on my YouTube channel, my podcast, my Instagram. And if you want to find me in all of those places, I will link them along the bottom. And also, like I said, do not forget that there is a podcast accompaniment to this video. So if you want to listen to me instead, you don't want to have to sit and watch me wave my hands around, then definitely go and search how to be a handmade boss on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, and make sure to bookmark us because, like I said, every single week we are dropping some really helpful stuff to help you to start, run, and scale your handmade business. So the first port of call that we did is that we contacted Etsy about this, and the response was pretty generic, but it was really clear, and it does kind of make sense. Etsy are a platform, but it's kind of like blaming a party host for someone saying something mean to you, right? Or going to a restaurant and someone else who's eating there trips over your foot and you blaming the restaurant owner. They are just a platform. They are a marketplace. They are basically a host. They did, however, say that they have got a new tool. I don't know how new it is, but it's a new tool called the Etsy reporting tool. Now, this is something that everybody should be looking at. And this is basically designed to make the process a whole lot easier. So when we looked into the tool, and the way I'm seeing it is that it's a good preventative measure, but it's also the thing to go to if you think that you have found someone copying your stuff. So when you go to this tool, you have to be prepared, and the information that they want is things like detail on what work has been allegedly infringed upon, Etsy listing URL or listing ID, name, address, phone number, email, that kind of usual stuff, a statement that you believe that in good faith that the material is not authorized by the IP property owner, aka you, and also a statement that the above info is accurate. Now, if you are using the Etsy reporting tool, there's like tick boxes and drop-down menus and things that you can use for this. Alternatively, you can write to Etsy, but you're going to have to kind of like produce all of this stuff on your own. Side note here, this is how big brands like Disney, Marvel, and the like can do an instant database search. And literally that is what the Etsy reporting tool is. You type in keywords and it basically brings back listings that it believes belong to you based on what you've searched for. So that is why every so often you'll get a big uproar of people on YouTube and Facebook groups and blogs and stuff saying, oh, my Disney listing's been taken down and this is this. It's because Disney probably 3 or 4 times a year will go on to this and go, right, okay, let's do a search for Disney, Elsa, Cinderella, this, and this. And they do like a blanket reporting sweep. So Etsy, as I mentioned before, are just a marketplace, and they have to be seen to comply with case law, best practices, and the DMCA, and they must remove any content when they receive a relevant complying report. And this explains why sometimes there are listings that are being taken down for the wrong reason, because their report was compelling enough to make Etsy trigger the I don't want to upset the legal buffs button. Because like we said, Etsy need to be an impartial party with this, and they need to be seen to be complying with the law and the best legal practices and the DMCA stuff and all that sort of stuff. Also, if you are someone who is convinced that a competitor has reported your listing, Etsy themselves say it's highly unlikely because they have to provide a compelling IP ownership proof. With the Etsy reporting tool, you cannot just rock up and be like, you know what? Like, I think I made this tumbler first, so I'm going to report it. And it literally has to be really compelling and damning evidence that they have had this idea first, or they have done this thing first. And if they're seen to be forging or faking or making or misrepresenting this information, it does become a very serious legal matter. And I believe the word perjury was mentioned. So you don't want to do this just to report a competitor, because, you know, not only is it putting your business in jeopardy, but also you as well. And side note on this, if you do get some kind of notice, you can counter this. But if it's seen to be perjury, again, you are in trouble. And Etsy themselves actually encourage you to talk to the other party and kind of resolve it yourself. So think of it a little bit like an Etsy customer case, where they will get involved, but they would prefer if you just did the back and forth to see if anything can be worked out. And if you're wondering, okay, so how does this work for my shop getting shut down and all this kind of stuff? Etsy say that they review each shop on a case-by-case basis. And if you're getting a lot of these strikes, of these IP infringement reports and strikes and things like that, it's a permanent bye-bye from Etsy. It's essential that if you see someone really closely copying your work or just straight up doing the exact same thing, to use the tool and actually have a legal expert on hand, and I use Rocket Lawyer, as well as dated proof that you have as well. One thing I will say, and as handmade business owners and as kind of places like eBay, Amazon, Etsy have become more and more popular, that copying does mean copying. So if you make tumblers with a mermaid pattern and someone made like a similar, maybe slightly smaller tumbler in a similar mermaid pattern, that actually might not be enough to get the listing taken down. It's got to be like laughably the same. You've got to be like, I cannot distinguish which is mine and which is theirs. Something that I would say is, if you were to order your product and this other person's product and you got them through the post and you mix them up, you shouldn't be able to really tell the difference. But again, not a legal expert. Definitely get some kind of legal advice or some kind of legal expert on your side to ask them this. Also, I have heard multiple reports of accidental copycats, especially if it's like a culture reference or something that's trending. And I know that it can be hard at times because you see something that is similar to yours and you automatically assume that this person is being vengeful and spiteful and not very nice. But don't assume that every other seller out there is out to get you. Okay, so what's the step-by-step that you should do if you suspect someone is genuinely copying you and maybe you've had some dealings with them in the past and now they're just being really annoying about it? And literally you are looking at the two listings and you're like, this is laughably the same. Number one, my advice would be to reach out to the person and ask them nicely but firmly, not in the heat of the moment, that, hey, this is similar to something that I'm doing. I have got proof that I did do this before you did. And look, if you don't take this down, I'm going to be forced to take it further. Something along those lines. But again, you don't want to do this in the heat of the moment, but you want to basically contact them and say, okay, I am aware of this issue and so should you be. Number two, if nothing happens, they don't reply, or you're just like, you just get a bog standard no, go away email, then you can explore the cease and desist option. There are plenty of templates online, but again, I would say to get legal advice on this. Number three is actually to get legal advice and keep someone on hand. I'm not saying you have to go and get a lawyer on retainer, but what I am saying is get someone who you've spoken to briefly. A lot of people will give you like a free 30-minute phone call. Just explain the situation and keep their details on hand, because if you need them and you need someone that knows the situation that you need to reach out to quickly, then they are there. Number four is to gather dated evidence. If if you haven't done this already, before sending the message basically in number 1 saying, hey, I see you. You know what I mean? So the more in depth, the better here. Now, dated evidence can be things like photos or documents, anything where you can kind of say, right, here's the date that this thing was taken, this thing was done, and you can prove that, you know, there is a timestamp attached to this. Number 5 is to report the listing through the Etsy reporting tool. Number 6 is to consult ACID, ASID, and this is a UK kind of advice place for you to go to when a creator has been copied, or like a similar governing body, depending on where you live. Number 7 is to calculate what potential losses this could be, like actual revenue. What losses could you have? Because at this point, if you have gotten this far, then it's probably has cost you money, or it is going to start costing you money. And what I hate to see is when someone is like, you know what, I'm not going to lose that much money on it, but I'm spending a lot because I'm angry. It's really important to make a smart business decision, because believe it or not, this whole process should be an investment in your future. If someone is copying a product that you don't really sell all that often, but it's made you angry, you're going to want to probably spend less on that. And, you know, not just money, but time and attention, energy, than something where someone has copied a bestseller of yours and you're like, you know what, this is going to really impact my profits. Then you can compare the two and kind of go, yeah, if I'm going to lose X, Y, Z potentially, and this is the impact for my business potentially, then I am, you know, okay to spend X, Y, Z to get this done. Number 8 is wait. It is a waiting game. Honestly, I've taken someone to court very, very recently, and it was a 6-month process just to get the thing started off. It is a waiting game. It's probably going to take you a month, 6 weeks, if not more. But again, I'm not a legal expert. That does depend on the case-by-case basis. I have heard some instances of people, especially if it's a big company, calling them out on social media and kind of getting their peers behind them. I don't necessarily say this is a good idea unless you are 1,000,000% sure that this big company has copied your product, because the backlash from this, and I have seen this happen where it actually turns out that the small business was wrong. They didn't do it first. They inadvertently kind of almost copied someone else. And I have seen it go very badly wrong. So I wouldn't offer this as advice per se, but it's definitely something that people have done before. And I would suggest kind of like researching this yourself to see if it's the right course of action for you. All right, so now let's move on to what you should do if you haven't gotten to this stage yet. If no one's copied you, you've not had to deal with any of this, but you want to avoid this and protect your designs. Number 1 is to figure out how copyright works in your country. Now, if you are in the UK, you can go on .gov, and in some cases, in fact, in most cases, you get automatic copyright protection. You do not have to apply or, you know, pay a fee or anything like that for it. So what this means is if someone is blatantly copying something that you hold the copyright for, you can take it further. Number 2 is to add copyright notices on your website, and please make sure the year is up to date. I cannot tell you the amount of websites that I scroll down to the bottom to the footer and it's like copyright, blah, 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 brand name, 2022. And I'm like, no, that's outdated. You need to make sure that these things are updated, but also add them to places like the bottom of descriptions and everywhere else that is relevant to tell people that, hey, this is copyrighted to me. Okay, do not even go there because I have my eye on you. Consider registering your copyright and or getting a trademark for things like brand names and bestsellers that you own. I've recently been through the trademarking thing three or four times for like my brand names, my challenge names, and things like that. And basically this is like the gold standard package above just having copyright. Copyright is good, but as you can probably tell, it takes some work to prove that this is yours. There's a waiting game, there's this and that. Whereas trademarking, from what I can understand, is more of like an open and shut case where you own the trademark for the thing, whether that be logos, brand names, words, all that kind of stuff. It is kind of non-negotiable because you have registered that. Now, there is a cost attached to this. I think it starts from about £155, but it depends on what classes you have. And if you're in the UK, if you just type in trademark.gov, you can see how to do it yourself. You don't have to pay anyone to do it, by the way. I do have a podcast episode actually talking about when you should trademark, how to do it, all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to pay someone to do it for you. However, I would recommend getting advice if you are like, I don't know how to do any of this. Number 4 is to date and document all of your designs with photographic evidence. Think of this like an insurance, right? You are ensuring that if ever anyone comes to you and says, oh, I did this first, you can get, actually no, because I've already like dated this and I've got this. Now, do bear in mind, this cannot just be like a date that you write down, because you could just forge that if you really wanted to. But something looking more like a digital footprint. So on iPhone, if you take a picture, it will always have some kind of date stamp attached to it. So just make sure that for all of your designs, you have some kind of dated proof, because I know this is a big pain in the bum, but doing this means that if ever something happened, you are prepared, and you know you are. Number 5, again, get the number, the name, some kind of legal expert on hand. You don't even have to contact them, but just having them there in case of emergency to contact can be really reassuring. Number 6 is to register your brand on the Etsy reporting tool. Like I said, this can be a preventative measure as well. Number 7 might be one that might tick you off, but people will eventually copy you. If you have success, people will eventually copy you. Like, it is something that every successful brand has had at some point. So for me, I get copied a lot, and I get copied a lot by bigger names, like people with bigger YouTube following, people who have like, you know, bigger things, bigger fish to fry, right? But the thing with this is that if I spent all of my time and energy and money fighting these things, it would drain me, and I would have no energy left to produce stuff like this and coach you guys and help you guys out, right? So it's really a case of picking your battles. And one thing that I do tend to do more is try to detach and lean into my USP more. At the end of the day, if someone is copying you, they're always going to be like 15 steps behind you, because they're only seeing the outside remnants as a result of you doing those things. They're only seeing your listings, your products, your website, and you're already thinking about the next few steps ahead. So it kind of makes no sense for you to be worrying about it that much, because you're already on to the next thing, right? All right, so the very next thing I want you guys to do is to go and watch this video here, because it's going to help you to kind of really get into how to trademark, when you should be doing that, and all that good stuff. I would love it if you would give this video a big thumbs up, just to help more people find it. But for now, my loves, I will catch you in the next one. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to How to Be a Handmade Boss. And if you're eager to boost your Etsy sales within just 7 days, then be sure to join my most popular free training at handmadebosses.com/conversion. You can also find the link in the show notes as well. Keep an eye out for our next episode, where we'll be continuing our journey towards handmade business success together. And until then, keep crafting and stay inspired, because the world really does need those special creations that only you can make.